Welcome to Antimatter Garage. As you know, I'm in the middle of the Supercharger install, and I just thought I'd mention that I spent $6,000 at Monkey Wrench Racing to get this cup. But the good news is, it came with a free Supercharger. All right, let's get on with the part where you have to do some stuff to the Supercharger before it goes into the car. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, this will take us through page 6 of the manual. How much the intake manifold weighs? 14.2. The scale only goes in 0.2 of a pound, so it's not going to be super accurate, but should be good enough. And here's the Supercharger. .4. So you're not gaining that much weight. Of course, there's more to it than that. There are these pieces after all. Let's put those on. All right, let's measure all of the Supercharger, including these parts. I'd like to point out these parts are kind of crap. The finish is really bad. Look, Monkey Wrench, you can't even see racing.com. I mean, I'd be embarrassed to put that on a product if it were up to me. And this just looks really rough, and the black paint's coming off. It's not very well done. Honestly, it's horrible. The Supercharger's fine. It came from Magnuson, but the rest of these parts, not so much. All right, let's see. That's Supercharger plus that plus that. 27.4, if you can't see that. All right, I have some good news for you if you're doing this. One is I thought I felt this that this was loose, and the truth is I was right. It is. Look at that. Now I can't loosen it; it gets stuck. But I believe if I put some on there, I can. So no need to weld anything. And that also means there probably isn't, it feels sort of smooth. Like, I don't think there's any, like, Loctite on it or anything. So, you might try the vice grips idea while it's the way it is. My vice grips, you can see the jaws there. They just don't, there's not enough meat there to grab anything. But if you get the right pair of pliers, you might be able to take it out the way they said. I'd give it a try, because this was a pain. Alright, so if you ever want to return to stock and put the new stud in there, you're going to need one that's, looks like it's 9.5 millimeters long, and, centimeters long, or 3 3/4 inches, and I don't know what it is. It's an M, blah, blah, go figure it out. Right there, I'll put an arrow on the camera. This is what was holding the intake manifold on earlier. They say that this has to be bent or cut out of the way. They show a picture that shows them doing from the bottom, but I couldn't access it from the bottom. There's too much stuff in the way. I'm going to access it from up here. I like the idea of bending it out of the way because I may want to return the vehicle to stock. And if I do that, I would like to have that on there. So instead of cutting it, I'm going to try and bend it, I think. It looks like it may be difficult to bend, especially since I've already removed the tube at the top. So what I might do is reattach that to give me some, leverage on that so I can bend it. Yeah, it's kind of tight in there. The wire's in the way, but that's the next step. Alright, that's how far I bent mine back. They said it's supposed to be flat against the tube, and you can see there's still a little bit of a gap there. They also said if the intake didn't fit, this was probably why. So, I'm going to try with this. If it doesn't work, I'll let you know. The instructions say you have to reuse your intake manifold gasket. The book says that these are not reusable. They probably are. It's fine, I guess. But the way I see it, I've done so much work to get in there. If I were to have a leak there, I don't want to have to undo all that just because I didn't put a new gasket in. So I went to Toyota and got one. It wasn't that bad. This one was like $18. No, this one was $14 and this one is $18. Alright, the next step is to unwrap the supercharger, and I believe we're going to put these pieces together. Again, I'm going to show you the quality, or lack thereof, in the monkey wrench parts. Some guys online were saying that this was just sort of cast off of an existing system that was used. Some other company made one, I can't remember what it was called. You don't see it, so I'm not sure it's that big of a deal, to be honest. I mean, it looks like the machine surfaces are flat because they've been machined. Same thing with this one. The finish is just horrible, really, but functionally looks okay, I guess. This one's supposed to look really nice because it's from Magnuson, and I'll let you know. I'm going to open it now. You should definitely use a razor blade and carelessly go cut this up. Apparently you're supposed to be careful with this part. It's plastic. Alright, so you can see, yep, it's beautiful. And the other guy that did this online, Will Chang, oh yeah, nothing there. His had plastic tape kind of on these two surfaces. This is completely open. But you can see in there are the rotors. See if I can turn them. Oh yeah, turns pretty easily. Pretty cool, huh? Now they say that the oil that's in here, I guess it's a sealed unit, and it's good for 100,000 miles. I would prefer to be able to replace the oil myself. Maybe you can. Somewhere here. Oh yeah, on the front I think I see a place. And that's where the gears would be, I guess, right? Are they in the back? Nope, intake's in the back. So, yeah, all the lube happens here. All the work happens right in the snout, I guess. And so there's a, I'll show you another view right there. I think that shows that it's been factory sealed. And I'm guessing that's where you would change the oil. Unfortunately, the way it's built, it looks like to change the oil, you'd have to remove the supercharger so you can kind of dump it upside down. At least that's what I think. I don't see any other place. I'm also looking where you get boost signal from. Does it come off of here? I mean, it's no, because the bypass valve is probably going to use vacuum. On the intake. There we go. Note, looks difficult to get to. You might want to attach a long hose now, wrap it up, install, pull it back out or something. I don't know, we'll figure it out. Alright, the next step is to clean these mating surfaces. Here and here and here and here and here. I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol. From what I understand, it is a degreaser. And some stuff did come off, right? So, probably a good idea. Next step is to coat this with silicone, and they give it to you in the box, so that's kind of nice. You should apply a very thin layer to it. I'm going to use my finger to smooth it out. And you don't want to make it too thick, because if any gets in and it dries, then it gets sucked into the engine. It can mess things up. So you're just trying to seal the air. I should point out that I think it's a little less susceptible to leaks at this point when there's pressure on there than it is if it's got vacuum, or lower pressure I should say, because you're not going to be drawing in any excess air that isn't measured by the map sensor. You'll just be losing a little bit of pressure, which is adjusted by the engine, right? Anyway, that's my reasoning. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments. In case you didn't know, there's a little point in there that you use to poke that. Opens it up. But you have to cut that guy off at whatever size you want. I like to do it small because you can always go bigger. Yeah. So when you put the thin coating on, I recommend you put it on this side because this side doesn't have threads. This has threaded holes, and so if you put the majority on over here, then you won't have to worry about trying to clean those holes out. Otherwise, when you thread the screws in, they won't go in as easily, right? So, plus theoretically, a torque spec is done with, I don't know, like 30 weight oil on it. When you torque something down, it's supposed to be like that. But I got a hole here and a hole here that I've got stuff in now, so I got to go wipe a bunch of this off out of the holes. Alright, so it's a balancing act getting the amount that you need and not more than you need so that it doesn't get into the intake. I try to make sure, whenever I do these, I always try to make sure there's a little less on the inside, because when it switches out it'll move that way and you want, you know, less of that. Also, then when you do that, I think I've got it okay here. You're supposed to put this on, but you have to know how it goes on because it may be symmetrical. So I believe that my engine's here, the snout's going to be over here where the pulleys are, and this has to go there, so I think it's really the only way it can go, right? Oh, also I checked. These two holes don't go anywhere, so I think they're for dowels, so it's okay if something gets in there. So you just put it on and bolt it down with the provided bolts. And you torque the 35 foot-pounds. Alright, this box contains everything else that belongs in the kit. This is probably not the best scale to use for this, but I'm guessing it's only another couple pounds or so, and I'm going to assume, 8.2, and I'm assuming the boxes are negligible weight. Alright, so if you add the 8.2 to the whatever 14.5, I'll do the math later. I think we're only gaining about 20 pounds with this install. Don't forget, there's still more that comes out of the car, like the old ECU, right, is replaced by the new one, so that's maybe a wash, I don't know. Also, the box is probably heavier than you think, so anyway, it's close, right? I'm going to say that 20 pounds. Alright, they give you the bolts for the intake manifold, so I will just use those. So I have I don't know, man-sized hands, and it's very difficult to turn these bolts to start off with. But important to note, they mentioned it in the instructions, but I just wanted to explain a little bit why. When you tighten anything like this, a manifold against another manifold, to keep it from warping, especially if it's going to be heat cycled, you should always tighten from the inside toward the outside, and in a crisscross pattern, so like from here to here, to here to here, to here to here, that kind of a thing. And what this does is it brings it down flatter. You can imagine if you tighten the ends, and you had a bow, right, because you tighten both ends, and now you try and tighten the middle, it's going to want to try and slide, but it can't to flatten out, right? That bow can't flatten out because you tight it down on these corners. But if you do it this way, and you tighten, then you tighten here, then you tighten here, it flattens out. So you can't see these minute, you know, I'm exaggerating, you can't see these minute movements, but that's the whole reason why you do that. Keeps it from turning into a potato chip. Alright guys, you're going to love this. So I've been working these down slowly by finger, and I can barely turn them at all. And this one's gotten a little bit stuck, and I can't sort of turn it at all by fingers. So I got a wrench that doesn't fit on. So I got another wrench which doesn't fit on, and I got a socket which doesn't fit on. So I ask you, how are you supposed to tighten these? I mean, you need one with a smaller head, I guess. Again, not mentioned in the instructions. This is a standard wrench, right? And I don't I don't know how to tighten this. Certainly not torque it. I mean, there are torque wrenches that have a wrench on the head on the end that you can torque that way, but I don't have one of those. Mine comes in from the top, and if I can't even get a socket on it, this one's almost all the way down. I can't get a socket on it. There's no way I'm torquing a 35, so I'll be lucky to tighten them more than with my fingers. Thought you might enjoy that. Alright, here's how you do it. First of all, they weren't 14 millimeter like I thought. They were 13. So if you get a box end, then you can get on there. And it's a 13. So, which is weird. Toyota doesn't use a lot of 13s. In fact, I don't remember them using a 13 at all. They don't use 16s, and they don't use 18s either. 12s and 14s. But Monkey Wrench apparently does use a 13. So that's the trick. Alright guys, I'm going to go and remove these now, as hard as they were to put in. And because I wanted to put some Loctite on there. To be honest, I have a feeling some of that gasket got on the threads and it wouldn't make any difference anyway. But I'm curious to see if I put on too much or not enough of the sealant. So I'll show you what the results are. One little note on that gray stuff. I didn't mention it in the video, but I think a lot of times what you do, and if you read the instructions, I think it'll tell you this, is you put some down and then you tighten it like sort of partially. I'm not sure how much. And then you're supposed to wait like an hour, I think, and then torque it down. I think it's supposed to sort of dry a little bit thicker, and then when it won't have as much squish out, maybe it creates more of a gasket. I don't know. Anyway, read the instructions. Okay, I'm not taking this off because now that I got the bolts out, I can't get it off. It's like seriously glued on there. I mean, I probably could if I pulled hard enough, but I just wanted to put a little Loctite on these. But you can see I did get stuff on the threads. I'm sure they're not coming out. Actually, this thing's on there so tight, I'm surprised they even use bolts. But I should mention I did find a technique for getting them out and installing them. Also, you want to put the thread locker. See, now I've got some goop on there already, so not so great. But you want to put the thread locker on the first threads because these threads aren't even used because of the thickness of the flange there. So here's the technique that I figured out. What you do is you put the bolt in there and you put your thumb on the top and your fingers can grab from underneath, and then you can kind of turn it until it gets low enough to use the wrench. I know it seems weird. It's hard to turn this way because all you can really get a hold of is this sort of washer, built-in washer shoulder, and you just slip. But if you do thumb on the top and finger underneath, then hopefully that will work for you. This is kind of hard because now it's kind of goopy. And I already put thread locker on these other ones, so I think it's just good because I've had many times where vibration will cause the bolts to come loose. I usually use thread locker or anti-seize if I'm having trouble getting bolts out of the engine on like every bolt I ever do, one or the other. Alright, so the instructions say to use the gold bolts on the top three and black bolt on the other one. So from this perspective, what's the top three? I think the idea is that if it's installed in the car, the Supercharger would actually be kind of like that, making these the top three and this one not. I watched Will Chang's video again, and that's the one he left out as well, so that's the one I'm going to use black bolt on. This black bolt. They said it's longer, and that's longer by just the tiniest bit. I think it holds a bracket, so I'm going to leave it loose. I think it even says to do that. And it's safe for later use, so it basically says not even to install it yet. Alright, well, this is me. See how pretty that is? just, no matter what I do. And I don't like textured surfaces like this. I've never liked that crinkle coat that they put on Ferraris and Hondas and stuff, because if you get a smudge on there, it gets in all that. It's so hard to get out. You can try and use a brush, but it's very difficult. The good news is that I can see down in there. I don't know if you can, but I can see that on the outside I had a fair amount of squish out, and that something like that could maybe get into the intake and cause a problem. But I'm looking down in there, and because I wiped it off on the inner portion of it, it had room to squish without pushing more out. And so down there I can see I've got quite a nice little line actually. I did the same thing up here, so I'm assuming I'm good up here as well. The other thing I really wanted to mention, and I forgot, when you tighten in a crisscross fashion, make sure you come back and do it in 2 passes. Because when I did that and I came back, I mean, that's the normal way to do it, but as an example, when I tightened this one, then that one, then this one, then that one, then this one, then that one, or this one and that one, whatever, I came back to the first one, it was basically loose. So you should, it's a good idea to do like half the torque you're going to use, whatever this calibrated torque wrench does. Come back and redo it all the way. Alright, the next step is to attach the vacuum line from here to here. I guess they've done it before, but that hole is very small. And when I'm trying to put it on here, I can actually see that I'm stressing this plastic. So you need to be really careful, because they keep saying how important it is not to break this plastic part. But honestly, I can easily see snapping this thing off right now, and I barely got it on there. What I often do when I want to get things on like this is I lube it. You don't always know that the rubber or the plastic that you're using can tolerate like engine oil or something, any petroleum oil. So what I do is I use olive oil, because it's vegetable based, and I know it shouldn't attack the rubber or anything, or the plastic, and it pretty much evaporates away. So I think it's a good way to do it. But the end had a little tiny brass fitting with its very small orifice, and I didn't want to get anything in there, so I wanted to get it this far before I went any further. I'm going to try and put a little of that oil on there and see if it helps put it on the rest of the way, but just be super careful here. I think this is going to be even harder, because this looks even bigger diameter than that, but at least it's metal. That was ridiculous. In my opinion, they gave us the wrong hose. This is as far as I can get it on. I mean, do I leave it just on the end like that? Or do I snap the plastic off? Which one's more important? Well, I have mixed feelings about monkey wrench sometimes. I don't understand what they're thinking. This is the size hole in the silicone tubing they provided that's supposed to go over this. Now, I have this that I found in my collection. That is roughly the same size nipple, wouldn't you say? And it was provided with tubing with a hole that size, and if you push that on, it fits perfectly. This stuff feels all kinds of wrong. It feels like exactly the way you want to break this off, because I could only get it to go about that far. Strangely, you'd think it would go further once it gets past the big part, right? But no. Now, I have this other one, and you can see the hole size is too big, right? So this one's a no. But this one feels really good. And they provided this metal T, and the two ends were bigger than the T off. Strangely, they had this going to the T, but going to the third arm. You'd think this goes through and then you tee off of that, right? They even have that in their pictures. Strangely, that means where do you go from here? You have to go to one of these other arms to go, but they're bigger, and I'm already having trouble getting the little stuff to fit on this, much less something even bigger. So none of that made any sense to me. Fortunately, I found these pieces in my collection, and this piece fits really nicely on there, and another piece of it fits nicely there. I have one more piece if I need it, and in fact, I'm wondering if this isn't a little too tight here. I'm afraid when there's a vacuum, or technically low pressure, it might want to collapse. But I don't know, this just feels way better. And if I were you, I'd be super careful. You don't want to break that nipple off. I do see this as being a problem, hanging out here, getting it into the car, because I had to squeeze by everything. It feels like something you need to put on after it's in the car. I'm not sure I can reach in there, though. I'm going to try it this way and see what happens. And if I feel like it's getting dangerous... Yeah, I've talked enough. I'm just saying, be careful here. You don't want to break one of these. This is in particular. This one's metal, so it should be pretty good. But this one's plastic, and they're telling you to be careful with it. This whole thing's plastic, and that's the one that's got all the stress on it. So it's kind of odd. In fact, it's even a shame that this nipple doesn't maybe come out on top. Of course, Magnuson, I guess, made this part, and they didn't know, that this is the way it was going to be used, I guess. But I'm using this to come off the tee. It was already on there for Monkey Wrench. It's smaller, and I think this is going to go to where I need it to be smaller, so that will work. But I think you need a larger diameter ID for this other stuff. Alright, so if you want to order what I believe is the right stuff, at least at this point, I measured it. It's 11 millimeters OD, but the important part is the ID. That's internal diameter. The internal diameter is 6 millimeters. So if you order 6 millimeter ID and whatever OD, but the thicker the OD, the stiffer it'll be, and so it could pull on that. So now that I look at this and the way they've got this connected on the T and not in the through, it almost feels as though they expected us to provide this tubing and not this tubing, but I don't know how you would have that except maybe cutting a piece off of your evap line. Assuming, but actually these are my evap lines and this one's too big, so I'm not really sure where they expected that to come from, but that almost seems like that's what that's for. This goes to the ECU Master Black, or to boost gauge, or in my case perhaps both. Yeah, anyway, I just wanted to let you know you're going to need those lines. Now, something else I don't understand, I've never used a standalone fuel injection system before, so maybe somebody could put it in the comments and let me know. But the evap lines are controlled by the ECU, and if the ECU goes away, does that mean the evap system simply isn't working at all? Or do they have that programmed into the ECU, the standalone ECU? So, I don't know how that works. But I also want to point something else out while I was here. Somebody had mentioned they're bothered by the fact that there's this bump here, right? And even a little tiny bit right there. And none of the other ones have it. I don't really care about that. I don't think that's that big of a deal, to be honest. Although it's funny because if you feel here, there's basically just a divot. Not sure why it was there to begin with. But I think with forced induction, the flow isn't quite as important. Anyway, you can feel free to comment on that as well. So here's the extra little piece that they gave that I believe they intended to go in these two locations. But you can see it's exactly the same stuff as the other, so that's not really going to help at all. Maybe it's possible they stuck the wrong one in there, I don't know. But they did give me the zip ties, because they're saying that they want you to zip tie these in place. I'm guessing under boost they're afraid they might pop off. So I'll do that now. Alright, here's another little interesting tidbit. They gave me 3 zip ties and say to zip tie it off. So they have in their picture a zip tie here, a zip tie here, and a zip tie here. So they're not concerned about here or here. But these have like barbs on them, whereas these kind of don't. I don't know what's there because it came connected. So I have an idea. I think I'm going to get myself 2 more zip ties and do all 5. All right, something else I want to mention about this. Some people were saying that this needed to be connected. This is looking basically for like a vacuum, because that's when it will bypass. When it's got a vacuum and not under boost, that's when it will bypass, you know, the supercharger and just run without boost. And they were saying that, but when there's boost present, it will mess this up quicker. Let's just say, it'll wear it out. And that instead, you should attach the other end not to an area that's getting boost, but on the front here, somewhere around here, maybe here, where you'll get vacuum, so it'll still function properly, but the boost won't mess it up. The internet says, so that was Spyder Chat. The internet as a whole says that there are different kinds of these bypass actuators. Some can handle the boost, some can't. I contacted Monkey Wrench to ask them which was which, and didn't get a response before I put this in. It is the weekend, so I'm not blaming them for that. But I've decided to go ahead and attach it where they instruct us to in the manual. You know, you do what you want to do. And I just noticed by touching this that it's loose. It just came out. That's nice. Just basically fell out of my hand. Yeah. Alright, since it's the weekend and not responding, I've decided I'm going to put some of that RTV silicone they provided on there, and I'm going to hammer that in. I put a little line so I can see how far I've gone. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. The next episode will deal with the install of the supercharger, finally. That, I remember, was a huge pain in the butt. I don't remember if it's a lot of video, though, because I think it's the same pain in the butt happening over and over and over and over until it finally succeeds. However, I think it is important that you know some of those details. Also, I might have trouble extracting the data from, the install from the water injection. I was originally going to do like a separate thing on water injection. In the end, the water injection kind of failed. It's just sort of installed, taking up weight right now. I'm holding out hopes that it will work in the end, so I'm leaving it that way. It was a tuner issue, I think, as well as maybe a few other issues. Anyway, point is, I think the way the video is shot, it's going to be difficult to separate it. So there may be some stuff in there about water injection you don't need to know. I'm sorry, I don't get paid for this. You get what you get, right? So enjoy it or don't. I don't care. I don't get paid.